In the year 1973, there was a remote German commune in the Chilean countryside that suddenly became more than an isolated religious enclave. It became a machine for hiding a modern regime's worst crimes. Colonia Dignidad began in 1961 when Paul Schaefer, a controversial former German preacher accused of sexual misconduct in Europe, gathered a colonist community and moved them to a fenced-in valley near Parral in southern Chile. The settlement presented itself outwardly as a model agricultural cooperative. Schools, a clinic, workshops, a German schoolhouse where children learned hymns, drills, and obedience. Inside the walls, however, obedience was terror. Testimonies gathered decades later describe routine beatings, sexual abuse of minors, enforced isolation from the outside world, and a cult of personality centered on Schaefer. The story darkened after September 1973, when General Augusto Pinochet's coup toppled Salvador Allende. Pinochet's dictatorship erected a shadow state of disappearances and secret prisons. The secret police, DINA, hunted opposition across the country. Documents, survivor testimonies, and human rights investigations would later make clear what happened next. Colonia Dignidad opened parts of its compound to DINA operatives, offering secrecy, isolation, and facilities where interrogation, torture, and disappearances could be carried out, removed from public view. Between the mid-1970s and late 1970s, dozens of political prisoners were brought to the colony or taken through its grounds. Survivors would recount fluorescent-lit rooms where hooded prisoners were beaten until they could not stand, graves in the surrounding hills that later yielded human remains, a culture inside the colony that treated outsiders with brutality when the regime demanded it. Local investigators and human rights groups later documented the presence of DINA personnel inside Colonia and established that the colony's leadership cooperated with the security forces. The collaboration was not accidental. Colonia had its own paramilitary training, radios, and stockpiled weapons. It served both as shelter for some of the Pinochet regime's interests and, according to victims and prosecutors, a site where abuses could be concealed. For years, neighbors and relatives of disappeared people asked how such crimes could be hidden so close to rural towns, how a European-styled compound with its orchards and tractors could hide burial pits and torture rooms. The answer, as investigators found, lay in institutional complicity, local authorities who were wary of confronting a self-sufficient enclave, a regime that needed off-the-record locations, and a leader who trafficked in secrecy. The conspiracy extended beyond geography into silence. For decades, survivors' testimonies were discounted or minimized. The secrecy of the commune, combined with its legal autonomy and the state's desire to repress dissent, allowed accusations to smolder. Families searching for disappeared relatives found files closed, explanations deflected. International human rights groups and Chilean prosecutors gradually began to map the connections. DINA's logistics intersected with Colonia's facilities. Witnesses identified guards and agents. Forensic teams exhumed bodies from clandestine graves. Public exposure accelerated in the 1990s. As Chile returned to democracy, pressure mounted to investigate past abuses. In 1997, as allegations of child abuse within Colonia surfaced in the press and legal complaints proliferated, Paul Schaefer fled across the border into Argentina. Yet the story did not end. Survivors, former colonists turned whistleblowers, and Chilean prosecutors pushed the case into the open. In 2005, Schaefer was captured in Argentina, extradited, and in the years that followed, convicted for crimes including child sexual abuse. Investigations continued into the colony's role during the dictatorship and into the disappearances connected to the compound. The horror of Colonia Dignidad is a layered one, the intimate terror of childhood abuse entwined with state terror, a private authority that answered the call of a dictatorship by offering safe havens for unspeakable acts. The conspiracy was not a single plot, but a network, an enclave that traded shelter and silence for protection and tolerance from a brutal regime. Today, the valley that once hid these crimes is quieter, renamed Villa Baviera,
its name a small attempt at rebirth. But the graves that were found, the testimonies that poured into courtrooms, and the survivors who still speak make clear the truth that history cannot bury. When a dictatorship needs places to vanish people, and a private power learns to profit from silence, horror becomes an institution. The slow work of justice and memory continues because the only antidote to such conspiracies is the unrelenting recording of truth and the insistence that every disappearance be named.